Hey everybody, Matt here from Matt's Movies, Music and More, and my special guest Andrew welcoming you to this week's episode of What Did You Think? Two fingers this time.
Very effective.
Yes. So if you saw our last episode of What Did You Think, you'll have noticed that we did comedy genre, which was the 1986 classic Clockwise with John Cleese.
You got it right.
I got it right. I didn't miss out the L.
Fortunately, yeah.
Yes. And I'm not always clock watching. There's a little pun there as well. So to replace Clockwise on the Twister Spinner, we have put in there the 1992 Joe Pesci movie, My Cousin Vinny.
Okay, yeah.
So be looking forward to checking that out at some point.
Yeah.
And today's movie comes from the family genre. And to replace this movie in family, we have put in there the 1999 movie, ironically 20 years this year, The Iron Giant.
Okay, it's one of those movies that I've always heard is wonderful and I've never got round to seeing it, so I am quite keenly anticipating that now.
Cool. So on with to today's film. So today's film we are doing is the 1990 movie The Witches, which is directed by Nicolas Roeg, and it stars Angelica Houston, Mai Zetterling, and Rowan Atkinson. So, The Witches.
Yeah.
Had you seen it before it came up on the Twist Spinner?
I hadn't really properly seen this movie. I get a very faint memory of watching parts of it on a bank holiday Monday and initially thinking, what the hell am I watching here? And then finding out what it is, but by that point it's already finished, and then just dismissing it. So this was a good opportunity to correct that at least. I will say right off the bat that big fan of Roald Dahl as a child, particularly his revolting rhymes and his dirty beasts, which I would recite at school at great length, much to everybody's irritation, I'm sure. But I admire him as an author, so that was already a good foundation for this at least.
Yeah. So, can you try and describe the plot of The Witches for us?
Luke, 8-year-old boy, American boy Luke, lives with his Norwegian grandmother Helga, or at least comes to live with his grandmother Helga after his two parents appear on screen for about 5 seconds and then drive off in the car and crash off screen. So there we go. But Helga is a loving grandmother, and she tells Luke all about witches, about how they're the specifics of witches, that they're all evil, they're all disgusting, and they all want to hurt and kidnap children. They're all bald, so they always wear wigs, so watch out for that. They they've got purple eyes, so watch out for that. And once, as a child, if you're taken by a witch, you're very likely to be never seen again. I did get caught by a witch and barely got away. In fact, before I was caught by a witch, I had 4 fingers. So set up there, and there is a bit initially when Luke is climbing a tree or something, when a lady who's clearly a witch in disguise, like, here, little boy, have some chocolate. But he's onto it. He doesn't get caught. But I think because it's Luke's birthday, or I think it's because Helga has diabetes, they are recommended to stay at the Excelsior Seaside Hotel. At the same time, there's this group of women led by Angelica Houston, supposedly for a RSPCC conference. If you're not British, that means the Royal Society for Prevention of Cruelty to Children. So you can probably begin to see where this is going. There's Luke, there's the grandmother, there's the hotel manager, played by the officious, stuffy hotel manager, played by Rowan Atkinson, and there's another family staying there with a little boy named Bruno. But I think it's wandering around the corridors looking for the toys. No, it's looking for his pet mice, because Luke has 2 pet mice that he's training to climb ropes and do circus tricks or something. Looking for the mice, he stumbles across the RSPCC conference, which he hides behind and is able to catch these women taking off their wigs and taking off their masks. Oh yeah, and their shoes, because witches have stubby, square feet. So yeah, this is the English Witches Conference headed by the Grand High Witch, which Helga warned Luke is the most terrible, most elusive witch of them all. And from this, first she reprimands them for, "I see children everywhere in England. Shame on you. You're not doing your job." But I've got a plan. I've got a plan that involves a new potion I've devised about you taking over all the the sweet shops in England, and putting the potion inside. And from once they consume this, "Oh, are we going to poison them?" No, you stupid, you get caught. No, when they eat this, the child shrinks. The child grows fur. The child is no longer a child. The child is a mouse. And then Bruno is used as a test study for this, and then Luke gets caught. So we've got little boys turned into mice, and we've got poor Helga. How are the witches going to be stopped from before it's too late, before they go from this hotel to distribute this poison? I think that's...
Yeah. Had you read The Witches then as a kid?
Can't say I have.
See, me neither. I'm not really a book reader, I'll be honest with you. I mean, I know of the Roald Dahl movies.
And I was the head librarian at one point at school, so I'm doubly ashamed of that.
I know that Roald Dahl is obviously most famous as an author for the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory book, which obviously was made into the Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory movie with Gene Wilder, and then obviously remade years later. But obviously, The Witches was one of those ones that I think it had only been written maybe 6 or 7 years prior to it being filmed as a movie. Yeah. So it was relatively a recent one in his book catalogue, I guess.
But his bibliography.
Bibliography. Thank you for that.
Like I said, I was head librarian.
Yeah. So I suppose let's start on with the behind the scenes stuff, which is that this movie is a co-production. It was distributed by Warner Brothers. And it took like $15 million in America and stuff like that. But it was a production by Lorimer Film Studios and Jim Henson's production. Now, yeah. I'll mention Lorimer first, which is that Lorimer made a lot of straight-to-TV kind of films, but they would release them theatrically, and they weren't exactly big hits, hence why this wasn't a huge gross. But the Jim Henson production, the fact that Labyrinth had come out, I think, 1986, so this is 1990... What do you think of the special effects in this movie?
All credit to Jim Henson's company with the prosthetics for the witches' horrible bodies and horrible faces. I have heard that they sweated and nearly passed out wearing this, and how horribly uncomfortable it was, particularly Angelica Houston. But boy, is it worth it.
And the mice, I think.
And the mice. I mean, it's a bit of... Watching it probably with an adult's or a critical sensibility, you can tell when it's a bit of a puppet thing, and then when it's an animatronic, "Help, Grandma, it's me, Luke." But it's very,
done really well.
It's very, very well articulated, and dare I say it, almost convincing.
I thought that was good, and the fact that obviously it does follow real mice, obviously having to do this. Would they call it stunt mice? The fact that they're having to do the actual. The walking and the stuff like that, to try and get where
when they have to scurry up a wall or across the floor,
rather than having a puppet one do it or something like that.
That would have been embarrassing.
So I suppose we had to mention that. Partly I suggested that we do this movie because I wanted to pay tribute, although he passed away last year, to the director, Nicolas Roeg.
Yeah.
Now, Nicolas Roeg wasn't exactly well known for doing these kind of family movies. I mean, he was really a cinematographer who started on things like Lawrence of Arabia, did some uncredited work on Dr. Zhivago and stuff like that before getting his big break with movies like Performance with Mick Jagger and The Man Who Fell to Earth with David Bowie and Bad Timing with Art Garfunkel. So pretty much he was a director that was used to working with pop stars who were sort of going into acting. So The Witches really stands out as a unique one, I suppose, in his filmography. I know that you're quite silent here at the moment, but had you seen any of Nicolas Roeg's work, really?
At university, I was made to watch Don't Look Now,
Great movie,
Walkabout, and Performance as potential essay choices, which I didn't follow. But I'll tell you, I was very grateful for the chance to actually view these films. I could certainly recognise Nicolas Roeg's work as an auteur, or certainly as a cinematographer, like you said. And it does come across here, a lot of it, you could describe a good chunk of this movie as extreme close-ups, either of the witches going, ah, or the mouse's point of view running across the floor with all the feet and all the giant faces. Yeah. But it's effective. It carries across the distorted, grotesque fairy tale.
It is very visual. I mean, like the fact that you've got this one scene, I'm not going to spoil it, but there's a scene where one of the witches, who's kind of like the assistant to the Grand High Witch, played by Jane Horrocks, it's near to the end of the film. I don't know if you'll remember remember this scene. It's nothing major, but it's a visual scene where the Jane Horrocks character is kind of in like a green circle created by lasers. So it kind of focuses on her when she's casting this spell. And for me, that really stands out as a visual scene, because I just think that's pretty striking when you see it, because it kind of cuts back and forth from her to what she's doing at that precise time without spoiling the movie.
Yeah.
Although if you haven't seen the movie, and like, you know, this movie is nearly 30 years old now, so, you know, shame on you, I guess. Yeah. But with the actors, I suppose we start with Angelica Houston, because she plays Miss Eva Ernst, aka the Grand High Witch.
Let's call her the Grand High Witch, because that's what she really is.
What do you think of her performance?
It's exactly as arch and over the top and domineering as it needed to be, and you could almost kind of argue that doesn't not carry the film, but she's the strong presence that she needed to be. Because
she's kind of got the physical beauty there, but at the same time she's got this horrible foreign accent, and she's kind of very aggressive, especially when she's being sort of chatted up by Bruno's father, the Scottish guy, Bill Paterson, I think he plays him.
Yes.
Yeah, and he's kind of chatting her up, and he's like, "Oh, I'd like to get to know you a little bit," and she's like, "Come on, let's go, you know, let's get out of here," you know, like that kind of thing. And it wouldn't surprise me. I don't know if this is fact, but given the fact that Angelica Houston played this role, it wouldn't surprise me if the way she was dressed in this, with the black dress and, you know, the sort of cleavage showing and stuff, that this would have been a precursor to her casting in the Addams Family movies.
I think the timing is too much, too close to not be a coincidence.
Yeah. So I suppose we have this movie to thank for that, hopefully. Mai Zetterling, who plays Helga, I don't really know much about her career, but from what I noticed reading up about her, she did die, I think, maybe 3 or 4 years after this movie was made. But she was a very, very famous actress back home in, I think she was from Norway or Sweden, something like that. And she's a very beautiful lady from what I saw the pictures of. So sadly I can't really say much about her. I want to go on to Rowan Atkinson now. I know you're dying to say this.
Well, it's hard not to when you watch enough British comedies like us to say, oh, it's him. He's doing his natural Rowan Atkinson Blackadder voice, but he's dressed in tweed the whole film, so it's hard not to think of this as Mr. Bean as a hotel manager.
I kind of saw comparisons between the fact that this movie was made around the time of Mr. Bean's pilot, So clearly he was obviously in costume for Mr. Bean, I'm guessing, in between doing this movie, no doubt. But also there is an episode of Mr. Bean where he goes and stays in a hotel. So I kind of see a little bit of comparison with the two. Or is that just me?
Well, like I say, it's hard not to make that association when you watch these things, and
kind of feel he's a bit underused, but
I expected more from him, especially when he started out as abrasive and officious as he is about we do not want mice in this hotel, and all right, but if they stay in here, then I expected a lot more conflict from him, or to toady up and be more pally with the RSPCC supposedly, but no, he really just goes on to chat up a one of the staff, and at the end, I'm gonna try not to spoil anything, to be inadvertently instrumental in helping to stop or kill the witches.
Yeah,
that's about it really. He's just going around going, I want laid down the track, I want the hotel to run smoothly, and oh, it's not running smoothly. What do you mean there's a mouse here? There's no mouse here. And then walking off again, and that's about it really.
Do you think that this character could be seen as an inspiration, played by Rowan Atkinson, for the Tim Curry character in Home Alone 2, Lost in New York?
I don't know how you could, anyone who watches this would then go on to watch Home Alone 2, Lost in New York, but that's kind of unfortunate to say that it feels like even Tim Curry had more to do in that than Rowan Atkinson has in this.
Yeah, because obviously in that it's a case of Rowan Atkinson's very sort of polite and sort of proper, not like Tim Curry, where Tim Curry's more like, he'll do anything, he'll grovel, he'll beg, kind of thing, just to keep the customer happy.
Stole your parents' credit card.
Yeah. But no, I suppose finally we want to get on to the other supporting actors, which is that you've got, like I say, you've got Jane Horrocks in it, who would obviously go on to do bigger and better things in her career. And you've got Brenda Blethyn, who plays Bruno's mother, and I didn't even know it was her because her character is so minimal.
Yeah.
She's now famous in the UK now for the TV series Vera.
Which is a kind of unfortunate because she's like Bruno's mum. And so her role is just reacting to the dad trying to chat up the Grand High Witch, or her ultimate reaction to finding out what's happened to her son.
Yeah, and you've got, in a little, very minimal scene, Jim Carter, who plays Andre the Chef. He's famous now for being in Downton Abbey. So there's another fact there. But,
and one of the recent Transformers movies.
Really?
As the robot butler of Anthony Hopkins.
Take your word on it, I've not seen it.
Don't.
That's what I was expecting. But I suppose the final thing we want to say about the actors is the children, the two actors, which is Jasen Fisher, who plays Luke. He's an American boy. And Charlie Potter, who plays Bruno. Now, we'll start with Jasen Fisher first. I think this may be one of only maybe 2 or 3 films this boy did as an actor. This was his debut, and he did no more films after that.
He's an early 90s American child actor. Nothing more, nothing less in this movie.
He kind of reminds me...
Help me, Grandma, and we have to stop this, Grandma, and...
He kind of makes me think of an irritating Jonathan Lipnicki. Anyone that's seen Jerry Maguire will know who I'm talking about.
Okay, I haven't, so I'll take your word for it.
Okay, and Charlie Potter, who plays Bruno. I mean, I don't think he's ever acted after this, but for me, he stands out because of the way he talks. Like, he has a scene in this movie, which, as you mentioned earlier, which is like, "Oi, that lady promised me 6 whole bars of hazelnut chocolate."
Yeah, I don't know if it's a combination of the actor or the way that Roald Dahl scripted it, because it is a very much a fat boy wants food and he gets his comeuppance or his justice or his reward. I'm thinking of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory here.
The voice, though, for Bruno just seems out of place with his parents, given that his father's Scottish, his mother's relatively posh, but he's like, "Oi! That woman owes me 6 bars of hazelnut chocolate." It's just very, very common.
It's funny how you mention that, yeah.
I don't know if that was due diligence by the production, maybe, that they didn't research it properly enough. I don't know. But no, I thought he stands out as a character, but I find Luke really irritating. And for me, I don't really root for his character.
And he's the hero.
Yeah, I don't really root for his character. In fact, this movie, I don't really root for anyone because just like we've done with the previous movie, like with Clockwise, I mean, it's really an ensemble movie, in my opinion. And I think everyone is pretty equal with what they give to the performances in the movie. I think, like I say, Angelica Houston is really good in this, even though her accent can be quite difficult to understand at times. Like I say, I think Jane Horrocks is really good in it as her assistant. I think Rowan Atkinson is really underused, like I said. Yeah, I mean, other than that, I don't really think I can say anymore. I mean, Mai Zetterling, who plays Luke's grandma, I mean, she's good as well. I mean, she's trying to do her best to help him and stuff. But, you know, it's one of these ones that I remember as a kid watching on video and owning it on video for a number of years. And every now and then, a bit like what we did with Clockwise, this was one of these films that you would often see on TV around sort of the bank holiday weekends and stuff like that. And I've caught it channel hopping over the years, mostly from halfway onwards, because to be honest, in my opinion, the first sort of 20 minutes, you could really skip that, to be honest. It is quite long, I'd say, still, even though it's 90 minutes. I still think it's a bit too long in places. It does drag. But when it gets to the hotel, it gets interesting. I think, like I said, the special effects by Jim Henson's production company is brilliant. I think, I'm assuming, did Jim Henson die later on?
Well, not long after this.
Yeah, so this must have been one of his last big productions that he had done. And it really stands out. It's really good. Is it my favourite movie that Jim Henson's production has done? No, but I've not seen worse, really, to be honest. I don't know how you feel
Well,
about it.
to say kind of similar things or maybe put a different spin on them, this is kind of like with Clockwise that we discussed last time. Firstly, it's 90 minutes long and perhaps a little more than Clockwise. I felt, yes, the beginning is a little too drawn out before they get to the hotel and things actually start happening. But apart from that, I thought it went at a brisk enough pace that it won't be seen as a waste of your time.
No, I don't think it's a waste of time, but I agree with you about the beginning. The beginning's a bit too slow.
I get we needed the exposition, but did we need to see have so much time dedicated to the parents dying?
That's what didn't make any sense to me, to be honest. I kind of felt that wasn't needed.
Yeah.
You could have started with the moment where you meet Helga and Luke, and she's his adopted guardian, and that she's become ill, so now they have to go and stay at the hotel, or whatever.
Apart from you would need all the dialogue about who the witches are and where they come from and what.
Couldn't that have been done as like some sort of fairy tale, you know, like nighttime story to help them go to sleep or something like that, and then you'd cut away to like a couple of years later?
Arguably. To rattle on a bit further, there's it's a movie that's for me now probably with an adult's unfortunate critical nitpicky sensibilities that is carried a bit by the likes of Angelica Houston and Rowan Atkinson, but mostly by, like I said, all the extreme close-ups and all the wonderful prosthetics and makeup and practical effects. It's a grotesque fairy tale, and it comes across as one. I think in terms of nightmare fuel for children, because it does get really nasty with the witch transformations and the mice transformations. I wouldn't put it on the same level of nightmare fuel for children as Return to Oz
or Dark Crystal,
but it's close.
Yeah, I mean, this was a PG in the UK, same as Dark Crystal and Return to Oz, but like I say, I think those are more disturbing than this.
Yeah, there was something else. I think with Nicolas, you were talking about, is it the best Jim Henson thing?
Yeah.
There's the best Nicolas Roeg thing, film, I should say, sorry.
Really?
As not this. I'd say that having since, thanks to my university course, watched Walkabout and Performance and Don't Look Now, I would sooner rate those as the best, as shining examples of his work as a director in the world of cinema before this.
Yeah.
But he's still did a very good job here. If I had anything negative to talk about with the movie, is the ending.
Yeah.
Which I can't spoil, so I'll try and be very vague about it as possible. What the thing is that the ending of this film is different to Roald Dahl's book. And Roald Dahl was upset about this. Roald Dahl is someone who was very nitpicky and upset about film versions of his books. I think almost with the sole exception of the 1989 animated BFG, because that stuck to mostly stuck to his work. But I think it was this and Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory that he took particular exception to, without spoiling exactly how this goes down. Watching the film version of the ending. Oh yeah, they did try to placate him by doing an alternate ending that's like the book, and apparently it was wonderful, and he was moved to tears. So obviously they didn't use it. So they went back, all right, now that we've shut him up, let's use our ending that we want. And then he was upset about this, and he wanted to take his name off it, but Jim Henson said, don't kick up a fuss, just do it. Let's go put your name on it. The ending, without saying what it is, yes. I want to say that it adds a sort of catharsis of, oh good, everything's back to normal. That's kind of how I felt as a child watching it. But watching it now, it does feel like a great big stonking middle finger F you to the audience. We're going to wrap this up in like 10-20 seconds. Roll credits, it's all sorted. Everything that's been sorted now, and despite all the this can't be reversed, and all witches are bad. Everything that's been set up is dismissed in a great big 20-second F you. Everything's back to normal now. Roll credits. Bye.
It did feel very rushed and put together, and the fact that, again, without wanting to spoil that particular ending, it just kind of felt odd. It felt really odd. It felt like the conclusion in the hotel is where it should have finished.
I thought, yeah, okay, that's the ending. Oh, you're still going on? You've still got more to say? Oh, all right. Did you really need to do that?
Yeah, does it feel a bit like what they would do in those old American TV series? Like is it epilogue, the final part of the series of an episode, before they have the credits?
It doesn't feel even that fully formed, to be honest.
So anything else you want to wrap up?
I think that's roughly as set to say that not the best Nicolas Roeg movie perhaps, but still shows what a great cinematographer he was, and how, as a grotesque fairy tale, as somebody who feels that kids are too mollycoddled and fed safe material these days. I would gladly recommend Scaring the Little Buggers by putting this on, and maybe they might be impressed by the witches and the mice.
Yeah, well, given that this was obviously made in 1989 and it came out in 1990, it still kind of feels like it's like the last of the great 80s family movies. That's why this movie, even though released in 1990, it still often gets labelled as being an 80s film.
I could sort of see that.
Yeah. So, yeah, I suppose that's The Witches.
Yeah, pretty much. And I think I hear something.
Yeah, Twister Spinner time. So, without further ado, let's see what's going to replace this film now. So, let's spin that wheel.
Okay.
It's landed on drama.
All right, let's see. What have we got here?
We have the 2013 movie Nebraska, which is starring Bruce Stern and directed by Alexander Payne. Now, Nebraska, do you know much about that?
I think it's one of those films I saw the trailer and I was aware of, but never got round to it.
Okay. So, yeah, we'll look forward to checking that out in the next episode. So, what did you think of The Witches? Is it something that you remember seeing as a kid or maybe as an adult? Or were you fans of the Roald Dahl book? Did you hate the movie because of the book being different, like you said? Give us some comments. Let us know. We would love to hear from you. Check out on YouTube, with Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. It will tell you all of the upcoming stuff that we've got going on this channel. So thank you very much, everybody. And as always, Andrew, any last words?
What's that? There, I think it's dead.
Thank you, everybody. And don't kill any mice. We don't want to promote any animal cruelty here. So thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.